The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. So wrote Marcus Aurelius, who was the Roman emperor from 161 to 180 AD. His book, Meditations, was written as more of a journal over 19 years where he reflected on his lessons with the whole weight of the Roman Empire on his shoulders, whilst also just trying to be a good man and a content soul. The book has 12 different main sections that discuss the different ways of thinking and techniques that anyone can use to help them live a more fulfilling and tranquil life. As a philosopher king, an advocate for stoicism, Marcus regularly saw the problems that anger caused people and said things like the soul becomes dyed with the colour of its thoughts, and that the consequences of anger are much more grievous than the causes of anger, so do not harm yourself with it. And I think it would be fair to say that he was obsessed with mastering the mind instead of letting his emotions be his master. And so the timeless lessons from the book still apply very much to this day. So, hello and welcome to the Growth Mindset Podcast with me, Sam Webster Harris, unpacking the psychology of self-improvement. And in this episode, we're going to distill the biggest lessons from Marcus Aurelius' book, Meditations, and what we can take into our life going forwards to create a greater sense of contentedness, purpose, and peace. The book is full of really good lessons to help create these things, so it's going to be a fun episode. On the show, I have my friend and intellectual sparring partner with me, Mr. Nicholas, who's very good at making me look stupid and helping increase our collective wisdom, and we'll learn a lot through the discussion. We start in the first section of the lessons around the concept of anger and how to be a better person, and move on to how to deal with setbacks and how to understand the lies that we tell ourselves and the nuances of being a human with an ego and how to transcend our inner nature. Enjoy. We'll be back in a moment to continue the discussion after the break.
That's not just the sound of that first sip of Morning Joe. It's the sound of someone shopping for a car on Carvana from the comfort of home.
That's a good blend.
It's time to take it easy, like answering some easy questions to get pre-qualified for a car in minutes.
Talk about starting the morning right.
Just like customizing your terms so your car fits your budget. Visit Carvana.com or download the app to experience car shopping the way it should be. Convenient, comfortable. The comfort of your favorite seat is now your comfy car selling command center, thanks to Carvana.
It doesn't get any better than this.
Your favorite seat's the best spot in the house. Make it even better by entering your license plate or VIN and getting a real offer in minutes.
There really is no place like home.
And speaking of home, Carvana will pick up your car from yours after you finalize your offer. Visit Carvana.com or download the app and sell your car from your comfy place.
So we're going to jump right in with the topic of anger and Marcus Aurelius' quote that the evil that men do harms only you if you do evil in response. Now, this represents his general view and thoughts towards other people's actions and his attempts to just try and not get so concerned or caught up with them and be responsible for your own inner thoughts and emotions. He felt that it's silly to try and escape other people's faults because they are inescapable. You can only really try to escape your own faults. You may as well leave other people's mistakes to the makers and focus on yourself, which is a very good philosophy, if not very hard to do, but it is something to meditate on.
This follows from what we saw in Epictetus. And so one of the first rules of Epictetus is that you cannot control what other people do, what other people think, what happens, what the world puts onto you. The only thing you can actually control is your reaction to it. And I think that is probably one of the essences of this book, is that whatever happens, your mind is in control of your reaction. And so if something harmful happens to you, your mind can make it so that it's actually not harmful, that it just happens to you. And so it's only harmful when you allow it to be, basically. And I think that's this principle you will see in many of his rules.
So he says, like, the universe's change is like a big principle of what he's talked about. So one example is he says not to live as if you had endless years ahead of you. Death overshadows you. While you're alive and able, be good. As in, just to remember that, like, actually, yeah, everything does change and you will die, but just be nice.
One of his stronger quotes I found: no matter what anyone says or does, my task is to be good. It's one of the fundamentals of Stoicism. Whatever happens to you, just do the good thing, do the right thing. Don't lie, don't speak untruths.
How do you do these things, Nico? You wake up each morning, you're like, I'm going to be good always.
Not necessarily, but I've found that reading these philosophical books, like none of the philosophical books say like you need to lie or it is okay to lie in some certain situations or
Mm.
white lies can be allowed. Most of them are pretty clear and then they say like just avoid not speaking the truth. It's something I found myself subconsciously doing. When I was younger, I noticed that I cared so much about what other people thought of me that I would like make up stories or inflate stories or not mention shameful things in stories that I was telling just because I cared so much what other people thought. And I've noticed that over the years, as I grew up a bit, I became more just not necessarily self-confident, but just like happy with myself and my limitations. I didn't feel the need to either inflate stories or lie about certain things.
I definitely get you. I mean, as in, you do feel you get more content in yourself and people kind of accept you or don't accept you and largely don't actually care about the difference of whether you sounded great in the story or not. They want to know the point of the story and what your role is in it. They don't really often care that much. And so it doesn't matter what you're saying. So yeah, it's a good principle to learn, partly from just maturity. It's hard to learn necessarily from just being told that that's what you should do.
Never lying or actively avoiding to lie makes for a more peaceful and tranquil life. You don't have anything to hide, right? So you're just yourself. You just do your thing. Because I remember like at some point I lied to my parents about my school results and it was horrible because I could never be completely open because I had to retake exams that they didn't know that I had to retake and stuff. And so it's like you constantly have to be on edge. And so it was very silly of me to do that. But now I really try to avoid lying. There's not much for me to think or be conscious about.
The other Sam Harris has a book all about lying. It's a really short book. It's literally an hour and a half sort of podcast. But he basically just sort of says you should never really lie. And it's a good principle. And yeah, there are times when it's awkward when it comes to like gifts and things. But if you sort of go about it the right way, it's okay. I'm almost too much of not lying and honest, like just straight up with the truth. Like, I just don't want this. Why did you get this? And should probably get better at being more tactful around these things. But he also talks about one of his good points that was making recently to my business partner. Sometimes like I've got more of an attitude where I just want to know everything that's wrong and I'm not really that concerned about what I've done right. Like I just want to fix things, where he's a bit more like he needs a bit more sort of comforting going along. And everyone's like, oh yeah, this is good first. And to get a bit annoyed with me when I'm just pointing out bad things. But I'm like, wouldn't you want me to do this in the long run? I mean, I don't really tell my mum some things or ask for her opinion because I know she's always going to be like, oh, that's great, Sam. And it's like, it's not very useful for me if I want to know if something's actually good. And like, what's the point if I always just say it's good? Like, you're never really actually going to know, or you're not going to improve in these things. And it's much more valuable to have the opinion of someone that you know always tells the truth than it is to have the opinion of someone who lies and you don't actually know what they're saying.
Good point. One rule that I took away was don't retreat from the world. If others do you harm, they do so out of ignorance against their will, and you will be dead soon anyway. Above all, they haven't really hurt you as they haven't diminished your ability to choose. And so in the essence, one of the things you can take from this quote is that you should try and keep good qualities of others in mind. And so that's something I've realized not so long ago, actually. And I actually haven't been very good at keeping in mind, but I tend to be quite judgmental about people, where if I see someone doing something wrong, I immediately ascribe their whole personality as negative and not necessarily evil, but I tend not to be very good at keeping in mind that every person first, like if they do something bad, it's usually because they think it's good. Well, almost always. Not a lot of people are able to do bad things and while they know it's bad. So that's one point. And then second, everyone is better at something. You can learn something from everyone. And I think that's something I tend to forget and I should keep in mind more, because if you keep that in mind, if you think about that person has something valuable to bring to me, you'll be way nicer to everyone and you'll respect people more. And it should be super beneficial.
It's a hard one. And as humans, we are kind of designed to kind of take things a bit more at surface level, but there's usually a really good reason for whatever people are doing that we probably can't think about.
We talked about this, about racism, where we tend as humans to be pattern seekers. And usually we oversimplify things given certain information. So we get a certain amount of information about someone and we draw immediate conclusions of it. And I think just trying to keep in mind that every person could potentially teach you something and also has the correct mindset, like tries to do what they believe is right, I think makes you a much nicer person in general. Just keeping that in mind is going to change the way you act.
Yeah, have there been any ways that you've been able to do that recently? Like you've seen someone that's being an idiot and you were like, actually, I'll just be nice to them. And
I think for me, the most valuable application of this principle would be not necessarily seeing someone being a dick and thinking that they might be doing the right thing, because I don't really engage with people who I perceive to be stupid people. Let's give an example. I'm relatively experienced in CrossFit. And so when I do CrossFit and there's people who are new to CrossFit, like you're in an environment focused around CrossFit, and there's immediately like a hierarchy where you have people who are very good at CrossFit at the top and people who are not so good at CrossFit yet at the bottom. And so you tend to like, in a way, feel superior to these people because you're more experienced at the thing that you're doing right now. But this doesn't at all make them less valuable as a person because you're now doing CrossFit. But a lot of the people in my CrossFit class are artists. And so like about art, like I don't know anything. And so if we were in some kind of art environment, they'd be able to teach me so much. So it's not right of me, even if it's subconsciously, to have like some kind of superiority feeling, although I might be more experienced at this one tiny thing.
Yeah, it's a really strange thing when you're doing something with someone for a long time, like working with them and they're like above you, but then you go somewhere else and you're like, oh, you can't even swim. And, and sort of like just the way like these things completely change, like what your value is. Like it's quite interesting when I climbed the Matterhorn with my guide, he doesn't get paid loads. I think he makes all right money, but he like drives around this like terrible car and he has to drive it like once a week to go pick people up and doesn't really have that much stuff. And so he sort of comes across like kind of poor and like lots of old gear. But then like when he's on the mountain, he's like the mountain guide and they're kind of like the king of the mountains. Like they get like special privilege and the entire time you're with them, you're just like, what's this guy doing? I don't know. And like anyone's there like asking for advice. So he spends most of his time being a king. And you're like, well, if 95% of the time you're like the guy, that's a pretty good life.
It's true. I think for this particular person, like his biggest achievement might be the fact that he is like the king of the mountain. And actually, it might be useful to treat everyone in the thing that they're good at. Everyone is like the king of something, or at least very good at something. And if you treat everyone specifically for that part that they excel at, well, the thing is, I feel like these principles are not really like a handbook on how to treat people or how to live a good life. It's more like, if you keep this in mind, your actions will change. And these changed actions would actually result in you treating people better, having less stress, etc. And that's what's so powerful about these meditations.
He has a quote that sort of sounds something exactly like that, as in like, it's all about your intentions and like what you think rather than like what you specifically do, because that then drives what you do. Another one that ended up sort of inspiring like the book, The Obstacle is the Way, is the impediment to action advances action. So like the problems that you have actually kind of advance you like ability to deal with problems. And you basically like the next sentence is, what stands in the way becomes the way, which is a very good principle, and hence why it's a whole book about the obstacle is the way. You know, sort of moving forward is by like dealing with problems, because life is just problems.
I found it super interesting actually, because it was the first time I really like saw it on paper, this kind of principle. It was completely new for me. And so I haven't really thought it through yet, but I feel like it could be very powerful indeed. What if the applications of that specific rule, you know, the obstacle is the way, is that when something bad happens, instead of thinking, oh, you know, something bad happens, poor me, instead of that, you think, good, what am I able to do with this? How can I use this in my advantage? Never thought about that principle before.
Obviously, like, you know, going to the gym is like throwing obstacles in your way anyway. It's like to train yourself to get harder. And the problem is when you plan a day where you're going to do like X, Y, Z for your business, but then 5 other things come in and they become problems and they suck you back and you're like, oh shit, this is just annoying. But like, actually, that is like the plan that you need to go through for the day. And these are the problems that you need to deal with after all. And that's the bigger problem, that you're not very good at planning because you're failing to like think of what it is you actually need to do with your day. And if you start like thinking about that, you can be a much better master of your day if you actually think about things rationally. It's a nice principle.
Yeah, and I think it also makes it easier to fail because it allows you to see a failure as something good, you know, you learn something.
Yeah, it certainly builds you. Or there's maybe other things, the other side of it that you haven't thought of, as in like you probably didn't plan for this to happen, but you're not quite sure what will happen next. And often like you can get like much stronger afterwards. Y Combinator talk about like crisis periods in sort of companies where there's usually 2 or 3 times where they basically think it's going to fail and like they can't even see how it's going to succeed, but then like it does. And when I interviewed the CEO, Grays, they had 2 major events where they're like, literally, our entire business model is screwed. We're never going to work out. But it ended up making them way stronger. So I think the first one, there was like a load of postal strikes, and they started as like a fresh fruit company that would deliver like fresh fruit to your office. And so they had to change to be like dried things. And now like they are literally like a dried food snack company of like healthy dried food. And like they're like huge in every single supermarket across America and like Europe and stuff. And that could have never have happened if they're just doing like fresh fruit snacks. So actually like completely empowered them to be who they became. But at the time they're like, shit, our business is fucked. And yeah, it's funny that you can't see these things in the moment sometimes. And now a quick pause for a breather whilst we discuss some of my wonderful advertisers that keep the show running.
The comfort of your favorite seat is now your comfy car selling command center, thanks to Carvana.
It doesn't get any better than this.
Your favorite seat's the best spot in the house. Make it even better by entering your license plate or VIN and getting a real offer in minutes.
There really is no place like home.
And speaking of home, Carvana will pick up your car from yours after you finalize your offer. Visit Carvana.com or download the app and sell your car from your comfy place.
Man, that sunset is gorgeous.
Grill, patio, sunset. Hard to get better than that. Unless you're browsing Carvana's inventory while you soak it all in.
Oh, burger time.
So sit back, get comfortable. Carvana's got thousands of cars under $20,000 just waiting for you.
I could stay here forever.
Carvana, where car buying meets comfort meets convenience. Download the app or visit Carvana.com today.
Have you heard about T-Mobile Home Internet Lite? Yes, Internet Lite. Someone actually thought making light internet was a good idea. What does Internet Lite mean? It means it's internet, but not full-on internet. It means when you hit your allotted data, you get throttled to dial-up like speeds from the 90s. And that means you can be downloading a video game and boom, you get throttled. Nobody wants that. You want strong, fast, reliable internet. You want Xfinity. Learn more at xfinity.com/TMOFacts.
Another principle of Marcus Aurelius is be open to correction. So you shouldn't view changing your mind as losing. That's one that I violate probably on a daily basis. I'm very bad at this. Like, I really like debating and having discussions.
Yeah.
And I really dislike admitting, okay, I've changed my mind. Thank you. And this is one that I really need to work on.
Ooh, interesting. It's a hard one because as a human, you always think that you're kind of open to things, that you're thinking the right thing. It's a confusing one. I remember being a child and looking in the mirror, and like, if you look at your eyes, you can never look at not your eyes. Like, your eyes will always follow if you look at the same spot. Like, you can't ever not look at the side of your eye or something. And I remember just being kind of confused as it and like trying to like beat it by like kind of looking away and then like trying to like glance and like you just couldn't break the sort of the undefeatable like constant of likes. It's so fast. And it's the same way with like your thoughts. You can never think that you're wrong in the moment because you can think that like what I was thinking before is wrong, but now what I'm thinking is right. It's impossible as a human to think that you're wrong about something. And it's just a sort of like this weird, impractical thing that you can't actually ever get over as a human. And like no one's ever written a book and thought that they're doing the wrong thing at the time that they're writing, kind of thing. It's kind of funny when you start thinking about it. Like no one's been like, oh, I don't know about this, but I'm going to write a chapter about it and it's all wrong anyway. Like I'll say like, oh, well, this is what I think is right. And perhaps like there could be something that's wrong, but actually it's probably right because I think I'm right. And yeah, it's just a hard one to really conceptualize.
When you're talking, I felt like if you're having a discussion and you differ with someone on a certain subject, the subject usually follows out of some like facts and statements that you, with your rational mind, make a conclusion on. And so I think following what you said, the only way to change your opinion, I think, is not necessarily, so you can't change your rational conclusion out of a certain amount of facts. It's like 1 + 2 + 3 = 6. The addition is not going to change. Like 1 + 2 is always going to be 3. The only way you might be able to change the 6 at the end is going to be if you change one of the numbers at the beginning. And the only way you can change your opinion on something, if someone proves to you that you shouldn't be doing 1 + 2 + 3, but 2 + 2 + 3, then might be able to change your opinion.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I like it. Cool.
Something to think about.
Yeah.
As it is.
Cool. Feeling wiser than yesterday. Good times. Nice. Were there any other points that you felt like discussing?
Some small quotes. I have one: cherish the freedom and liberty of everyone, which means don't be inattentive and be in the mind of the speaker. And so this is something, again, that I tend not to do very well. It's a point before where you think that everyone does the things that they believe that are right. And so I think if you go through life, when someone says something to you, just putting yourself in the shoes of the speaker consistently before reacting, I think is going to change your life completely. For me, when someone does something, I always look at it from my perspective. I made judgments from there. And if ever I'm wise or patient enough to just put myself in the shoes of the speaker, it changes the way I react to it every time. And I think that's a super valuable principle.
I'm quite enjoying actually sort of taking this further because I think it's not that practical to just sort of, as in like the problems that we had to just say, oh, this is a point. It was a good point. As in like, it's nice to actually sort of say, okay, how does this come up in your life? What's the story? Because I feel like I learn a lot more. And maybe as listeners, like get some insights.
This principle alone, I think, is the basis of the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And so I think if you want to really apply it, it would be useful to read that book. So for me personally, I've read How to Win Friends and Influence People, and I still feel like I'm very lacking when it comes to applying this methodology where you try and every time put yourself in the shoes of others. I wonder what would be a good way to start learning these principles when it comes to helping you in your relationship with others and how to react to others, right? Like, how could you put this into life? It's like a habit.
Yeah, I mean, it's in talking a lot about things and trying to withhold judgment when something you kind of know is annoying. You think, okay, well, this is annoying me, but let's pretend I'm not annoyed and talk about what you perceived, like with a non-violent communication, and then let the person tell you why they're doing it or something. And then it sort of seems so like, I went blackberry picking and it took me like half an hour to pick probably not that many blackberries because it took so long. I kind of had a high value on them. But then my flatmate was like, we buy like frozen blackberries and stuff. So he shoves loads in the freezer. He just like shoves them all in, like, because we didn't want to buy more blackberries because we had some fresh ones. So he just shoves them all in a smoothie. And I'm like, fuck, man, that's like half an hour of my time. Why have you done as much? To me, they felt like 20 quid's worth of blackberries. So they're, relatively speaking, it's like still £2 to go and buy them. But he's just like, rather clear the freezer before buying more ones. But it was like annoying me. But then like, I was like, so yeah, this whole blackberry thing, you know, that took me like quite a long time to pick them and stuff. It's like, oh yeah, I just kind of thought like it'd be good to like not have like more stuff in the freezer, like if we got blackberries. And like, yeah, it's probably what you're thinking. I probably shouldn't be like getting pissed off. I should probably just either say that like just don't touch my blackberries ahead of time, or like accept that like they are just there and we normally have them, so that's what's going to happen. And no, I'm gonna get annoyed by it instead of just sort of lol at myself for being an idiot.
I feel like in this situation, the practice of meditating in the Buddhist mindful kind of way is probably very helpful, where you are able to assess your emotional response to things and realize that these feelings can be avoided or put aside or accepted, and then act rational. The way that you described it was perfect. Like, you're angry at first, and then you're able to think, what if I wasn't angry? And then it all makes sense.
Yeah, I'm definitely not as good as I was when I first finished the Vipassana, but like by the end of the Vipassana, you basically become convinced that every time you feel annoyed about something, it's just like sort of like a mind puzzle or something, like a Sudoku, to just work out how you can not be annoyed by it. And there's always a way to not be annoyed by what's going on in your surroundings. And you just need to sit and think about it for like a few minutes, and you can usually come up with a way to be like, actually, it's fine. It's really funny. And it's one of those things that sort of is reinforcing, is when you kind of fall into like getting annoyed by things. If like having that conversation, it's just, you should start getting better at having that conversations with your partner or whatever. And when you get the feedback of feeling good afterwards and being like, oh, we were both kind of annoyed about something and like, now we're not, you sort of start doing it more often because you're feeling bad and you want to get to the good feeling, and you get to the good feeling by talking about it. And so you sort of train yourself by doing it, which is nice, but you just have
like
to
Pavlov.
start doing it. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, good. We've come up with some more examples on those things. Handy.
Nice.
I guess I've only got like two other things sort of relate to some of the stuff we've spoken about. One was, we all love ourselves more than we love other people, and yet we care more about their opinion than our own, which is,
I love that one.
yeah. Super cool.
So true. I feel like in the world of social media, this is even more the case, and even more destructive to general well-being of people.
100%. It's such a weird thing, because I mean, even before social media, you're still like, you hold yourself to way higher standards and do things that you wouldn't do to others in the way you judge yourself, despite the fact that you also conversely do the opposite. Like, you also like allow yourself on a lot of other things where you don't judge other people, where you get like pissed off by people doing one thing, even though you go and do the exact same thing, like finishing someone else's milk, but like get pissed off when they finish your milk, or cutting traffic, or I don't know. And any of these things that you're like, oh, you have a reason for doing it at the time, but then see someone else and it pisses you off.
I really like that quote. And I was wondering, why is it this case? How come people attach so much importance to what other people think? And I think the answer is actually quite simple. And it's just elephant in the brain. We could not survive on our own. We might be able to now, but we could not survive on our own. And so we had to be social. We had to be liked. We had to be seen as important, as valuable. And I think social media gives us the tools from our bedroom, lying in bed, to be able to seek encouragement or seek the approval of others. And I think that gives us a great feeling. And I think in terms of survival, and this is not the same as well-being, I think in terms of survival, it's more important what others think of you than what you think of yourself. However, in terms of well-being, it's the other way around.
Yeah, it's a sort of bit of a conundrum, but definitely like your status in tribes will affect like whether people help you and all these things.
Exactly. How much food you got? I like food, so I'd be like, I had been an ass kisser in a tribe.
Maybe that's why like kids can be so annoying, but like most of the kids that you know who are like complete dicks when they were young are like pretty like agreeable these days. And then if you sort of meet them, they're like, oh, you can fit into society, like, but you're an idiot the whole time. What's going on?
That's me, by the way.
Yeah.
Talking about as far as I fit into society right now.
Yeah. And then we're lying to your parents around the thing.
Exactly.
They'll kick you out the tribe by now if you're just being a dick.
Exactly. All right. Cool. Do you have any other specific things? I have one more with which I would like to end.
Okay, so just pre-ending. Ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions, which relates to the last quote, really, a little bit. But it was nice.
I just want to say that I also wrote your quote, the one that you just said down. I think it was very interesting.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Well, it's not the one with which one I want to end. Final quote of Marcus Aurelius: "Stop thinking about what the good man is, just be one." So we're now talking about what we should do and what people should do and how people should change to be more stoic, more like Marcus Aurelius. And I think we should stop talking, start doing, Sam.
Yeah, okay.
It's good to think about how we could apply these rules to our own lives. And now it's even more important to just start doing it instead of just talking about it.
Definitely. Glad that we did a bit of chatting around these things.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like talking about it with you. It's very useful. It makes it, again, more clear. All right.
Yeah.
Very good.
Moving on.
That rounds up the episode. I'm going to end again with the quote: "Stop thinking about what the good man is like and be one."